Okay, so I'm trying to explain something. The only truly bad bread is here, but you can still use it, and here. And it's not even bad bread, it's just not ideal. Proofing and fermenting is on a scale. So we all want to get to, we're going to say for some styles, because there's multiple styles of sourdough as well. What winds up happening is when you don't give your bread enough time, in this area, your crumb winds up being very, very, very tight and dense. As the proofing progresses toward the ideal, this is where we want to be, the crumb starts to open up, but as the gas forms, you get longer elongated bubbles. As you start over, we're going too long, so over fermenting, your bubbles go from side to side because your dough, your crumb, the structure has lost the ability to hold on to the bubbles. So when we're in the ideal, even here, you will have more regular, rounder, happier, uniform bubbles, but you'll still have a bunch of little ones too, because that's just how bread works. And then as it goes this way by half an hour to an hour, the bubbles just start to weaken. The structure starts to weaken, so the bubbles start to go from side to side. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up right now is because I'm going to talk about timing here for a moment. Because what will sometimes happen, depending on where you are in the world, you're going to try to time when to get the ideal loaf. But something else that you need to be aware of and I'm only going to talk about temperature. I'm not going to talk about flours right now because I have another video that's coming that where you start blending flours, you start having challenges. So your temperature affects how your fermentation, your proofing is going. And depending on the part of the world that you're in, your temperature spread within a day can go from cold in like the morning, use that as a slider. So let's say in the morning, it's cold in your environment. You're going to feed your sourdough starter, you've got some time. As the day progresses, your temperature could start getting better and your fermentation could start speeding up. If you get to hot temperatures between 26 degrees, these are Celsius, to 30 degrees Celsius, this is going to get faster. So I'm trying to explain this easy. Depending on where you are in the world, if you have a colder environment, it takes longer to get from here to here. The coldest areas could be 24 hours. As this goes up, your temperatures could be, I'm talking about counter, like proofing on the counter, your temperatures can be 10 to 12 hours. As the temperature gets really hot, your temperatures could be 3 hours, 2 hours. If you're working with whole wheats, this can actually go to 1.5 hours for you to be at the ideal. So you have to pay attention to your temperatures to figure out where you are on this scale as well. Because what's happening in my apartment, and I'm familiar with this because I have baked in Calgary, I have baked as a commercial baker, I've worked with people who work in the baking industry, and I'm now in Ontario. So I am familiar with the fact that no matter where you are in the world, there are recipes for bread that are made specifically for that part of the world, and the conditions are created for the bread to work in that part of the world, or they simply have an environment that doesn't fluctuate too much. As home bakers, our temperatures are going to fluctuate. So coldest, I'm talking about counter, you could take up to 24 hours for your bread to get to here. On those beautiful, lovely, warm days, it could take 10 to 12 hours from starting to get to your bread to here. What might happen on those warmer days, when you're hitting the 26 to 30 degrees Celsius, I don't know why I did that, you got to work fast. And you don't necessarily have the luxury of doing a poke test and hoping it works out. And something else you need to consider too is if you're in a place like Canada, yes, I can draw a maple leaf, but this is just illustrative purposes, where we have snow 6. We'll just do it like that. And then we could have snow at night, and then a happy, warm, sunny afternoon. Our temperatures could accelerate from cold to being in the happy area to suddenly being warm. And this again will affect what happens with your bake. Now, if you're in a really warm and humid environment, again, you could go from the happiest time in the morning for you to bake to suddenly your temperatures skyrocket up to between the 26 to 30 degrees mark, and where you thought you might have 5 hours to work in, you only actually have a condensed period of time where you could go over. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this to people, because you cannot, without actually having very controlled conditions, these are uncontrolled. For home bakers. So without having the perfect condition or having an air-conditioned place, you have very little control of what is going to happen here. So knowing this, knowing that the ideal condition could happen between 10 to 12 hours, you're going to start checking around 6 hours. If you know that you have 24 hours, you can start checking at 12 hours. If you know that you only have 1.5 to 3 hours to go from the area where you've added the levain to being over for your bread, you want to start checking at 45, and you may not want to be messing around. So you may actually want to do a mix method instead of an autolyse method. But the reason I'm telling you this is when it comes to baking bread, don't worry about your timing. Once you've got your timing down, timing is about feel right now. But when you have a fluctuating environment where you can go from really warm to really cold, or maybe it's cold, warm, and then it drops again, which could also affect this, right? So sourdough baking is not about your timing. It's about getting a feel for your bread. I have one little video out where I'm talking about how you can use the coldest temperatures. So if you're in a warm environment, you want to keep things colder to control the time. So you can mix things quickly and then get it into a refrigerator like this to help control your time. But if you're sitting within these temperatures, your time is going to be fast. Your activation is already happening, and it starts from the moment you add the levain into your bread. Now, really quickly, I'm going to get another sheet of paper. Hold on, I'm going to hit pause. I hope you can see everything. Can you? Yes, good. I hope. Okay. Okay, this should work. Now, what I'm going to talk about next is how you can control the warm and the cold, to get you can control two things. I'm talking about these two flours. When you start getting into the whole wheats, that's a different flour and it's a different mechanism. Still, some of this does apply, but whole wheat goes faster no matter what you do. And then that's more mechanics that we can talk about. However, for now, for your fermentation, going under ideal or over, if you're in a very warm environment and you're trying to get to here, what you're going to want to do is change your levain. Let me see if I got one more magnet. Why not? If you're in a warm environment, start with less levain. So if you have 500 grams, and this is just to get you to where you need to be until we can start tweaking. So 500 grams of flour. I think you should always use bread depending on where you are, because there's also strong flour, but we won't get into that right now. Let's add that back because some folks are in Europe. So 500 grams of flour, let's say 340 to 350 grams, depending on where you are, of water. You're going to go between 9 to 10 grams of salt-ish, depending on what you want. We can control the levain between 25 grams, 50 grams, 100 grams, or 150 grams. So we're going to put levain. So if your dough is constantly going over and you cannot control the warm, or you're having wild, it starts cold, suddenly it's warm, suddenly you're in the middle, you can control the levain. So if you need to buy yourself time, use less levain. Okay? And we're not talking about perfect hydrations right now. We're not talking about perfect crumbs. We're talking about what you can do in your environment to help you get to where you wish to be. Okay? So if you're going to have a lot of warmth, go with less inoculation to start with. This is where you start testing. If you're going to be in a very cold environment and you don't want to wait 24 hours, you can speed it up by adding extra levain. That will actually affect your crumb slightly, so you have to pay attention to what you're doing, because if you're adding the extra levain, you might want to start messing with these. I'm not going to get into that part right now. Right now we're just talking about how much inoculation we can add to get you where you need to be, because you will have to make mild adjustments. But if you're testing to see where you are, you can start here. If you cannot control this, if you don't have air conditioning, if you have a sudden, I lived in an area where we would go from -10. We went from -25 to +25 if a Chinook came in. So we would go from the absolute coldest to hello. And I've experienced that. So I had to control my environment as best I can. The other thing that you can do is you can control your levain to see where you need to be. If you're always warm, start here. If you're always cold, start here, right? If you know that you're going to have wicked swings and you're not going to be around, you can try on the levain, go with the 25 grams and then get it in the fridge to let it finish. The fridge will still allow the starter to continue to, the yeasties, the little happy guys. We like our yeasties. They make our bubbles. This is what makes us happy. What the fridge does is it slows the temperatures down. But while you're working on your bread is fermenting here during bulk. So if your bread, your levain, your mix is really active because it's warm during bulk, you're already changing what's happening during your fermentation. This could be going from, you have 3 hours to suddenly you have 1. So this is where your fridge becomes your friend. I'm going to put this video up and I'm hoping it's going to help. I'm going to try to find a way to use the magic of animation to try to show you a better visual aid to show you how this works. But I'm hoping that this helps, because if you are in a place like way deep down south close to the equator and you're struggling to get your bread to the ideal, your two choices are to try to control your temperature. And if this is not possible because of location, because of you don't have air conditioning, which in hot conditions, I feel for you. Or you don't have control over whether you go from warm to cold, warm to cold. Your next option is to check on your levain, all right? Because the more that you have, the quicker in colder conditions that your bread will rise. The less that you have, because your little yeasties need to eat, it will take them longer to get to this. And if you're finding that your little yeasties are eating so fast that you're almost always winding up here, then you don't want to feed your yeasties too much. I think that's the best way for me to describe it. So I'm going to put this out as an educational. It's rough, but that's what's happening with some folks. Because when you cannot control this, You can control this. I hope that helps. I have more stuff coming in terms of whole wheat, but again, there's also the odd cat video. I'm going to be doing some practical cooking because that's who I am. And you're going to get the odd art project in there too. But hopefully this is a good place to start. Have a good day. You can control this. I hope that helps.